Hi, hello, welcome to my review of this new James Mangold movie, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. This is the fifth Indiana Jones movie and easily one of my most anticipated movies of this year. I don't want to say that I was always the biggest fan of Indiana Jones. I definitely liked the movies as a kid. I really grew to love part 1, Raiders of the Lost Ark. I always liked part 2, and I always loved Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which is maybe my favorite, but I'm not sure because Raiders is just so good. And part 4 was always a fun movie to me because I watched it when I was a kid, and I think I have less hatred for it because of that. I can just enjoy this movie, even though I know it's not very good. And now with this one, I definitely think this movie is not good, but it's better than part 4. It has a lot of problems, and I will get to that, but I still think this was a very enjoyable movie, just like part 4. And I think that's because I kind of have some nostalgia for Indiana Jones, and I can just enjoy watching anything with these characters, with Harrison Ford. Therefore, if I just see him hunting for whatever artifact he's hunting for, I still think I would always enjoy it. And yeah, that's why I still enjoyed this movie, even though I don't think it's a really good movie. So this movie is just about Indiana Jones hunting for another artifact. This time it's the Archimedes style. I don't want to really say what is going on with the plot of this movie towards the end, but yeah, it's definitely again something a little different from all the other movies we've seen this far. This movie is directed by James Mangold. I was really interested in what he was going to bring to the table. I was kind of skeptical about Steven Spielberg not directing the fifth one because he directed all of the previous movies. I liked all of them. I think they are all very entertaining. But it's not like I was very pessimistic about James Mangold being the director of this film. It's just that I haven't seen any of his movies except for Girl Defined, and I mean, even though all of his movies are very well received, it's still kind of weird to see someone else direct an Indiana Jones movie. So let's start off with the good things about this film, and that's most of all the characters. I really, really like the characters in the film. Obviously, first of all, Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones, I think is entertaining. All the other characters, there was some sidekicks and side characters in this movie that I thought were entertaining. They were not completely annoying or boring or whatever. I just think they are not as outstanding. Then there's also the second main character, Helena Shaw. A great character in my opinion. I really like her. The thing is, she is kind of unlikable, and they try to make her really unlikable. Like, she's a bitch in this film, but she does it very well. And I think because she kind of has an arc over the course of this movie, and because she has this very complicated relationship with Indiana Jones, it kind of makes for very exciting moments where you don't really know where she's going. And I think she's, even though she's an unlikable character, she is definitely an interesting character as well. But my favorite character definitely in this movie was Dr. Jürgen Voller, played by Matt Mikkelsen. He's one of my favorite actors definitely, and he brings a lot to the table. I really just enjoy this character. He's evil, definitely. He's one of the most evil characters in the whole Indiana Jones franchise. But what I think was so great about him is, first of all, I did not know that Matt Mikkelsen could speak German so well. Like, for example, when I compare him to Jesse Plemons in Jungle Cruise.
What is to stop me from taking a knife and cutting off little pieces until you tell me for nothing?
I mean, that was at least a try. It was Jesse Plemons having fun with something, but Matt Mikkelsen actually seems like very authentic, and it seems like just a German accent that he has. But what I also just like about him is definitely his motivation. His motivation is, yeah, evil. Again, he's pure evil, and I think it's such a great reveal that I did not really see coming, to be honest, but it makes sense, and yeah, it just made me enjoy his character so much more. Now, what I also really enjoyed is that in general, this movie has this theme of time that just really fits to the movie. I mean, first of all, Indiana Jones. It's the oldest version of Indiana Jones we will ever see, at least played by Harrison Ford. I don't know what's gonna happen in the future, but yeah, it's obviously about him aging, about him and his time running out. That's basically the main thing this movie is about, and it perfectly fits that the artifact he's searching for is the Dial of Destiny, which is something that controls time, or at least appears to have some control over time. And he kind of wants this control over time because there are things in his past you would like to do differently, which I think was a very great addition to his character. Then it also really fits that this is, except for the third Indiana Jones movie, the only movie with a flash forward. Right in the beginning, the first 20 minutes is taking place before any Indiana Jones movie, I think. And so that just fits that the only movie that is really about time in this series is also beginning with a long flashback of the younger days of Indiana Jones. So we kind of have a comparison of how active he was when he was young, and now the comparison to him being an old guy. Even the students in his class are not really enjoying his teaching anymore, whereas in the first Indiana Jones he was a very beloved teacher and everybody was crushing on him. So that's definitely something I really, really enjoyed. Even though I wish that the movie acknowledged his aging a little bit more, because to be honest, he does a lot of things that he shouldn't really be able to do with his age anymore. And you kind of notice it. Like, for example, when he punches someone, it hits so hard, and I kind of don't believe it. I don't believe it at this point anymore. And it's not like I don't want him to do something, but it just feels like it's much less realistic than it would be. Yes, Indiana Jones is a badass guy, but he's still 80 at this point, and the only time they really acknowledge him being old is when he climbs a wall and he says all these things he has done at this point and how he's just hurting and why does he do this still. But that's basically the only real time I thought, okay, yes, he's aging, and they acknowledge it. So I wish they would have done that a little bit more, not just in a comical way making fun of him, but actually just showing him struggle a little bit more with the things he has to do in this film. Now this brings me to the bad things about this movie, which there are a lot. Most of the things I will talk about in the end of the video, probably after I give my rating, because it has to do with spoilers, definitely. But the main thing I want to say I really didn't enjoy about this movie is basically everything, including the action in this film. I try to always give movies a chance and not try to nitpick a lot of things, but to be honest, when there's something illogical about a movie, or when I realize there's something that is not quite right, I get taken out of the experience very quickly. For example, in John Wick Chapter 4, John Wick flies out of a building, and there's a lot of things that John Wick has been through at this point, and this seems like the most unrealistic thing because he stands up instantly after that, and it just feels very off, and after that I just kind of get taken out of the experience whenever I see him stand up instantly again. And this movie was basically filled with that. First of all, the de-aging in the beginning, it just didn't look very great. I mean it looked good, but again, if I see that it's a de-aged face of Harrison Ford, I just get taken out of it. It's not like I'm trying to bash this movie for having not the best CGI. It's just that I can't help but be less engaged when I see that it's fake. And the same is the case with every action sequence where there's a lot of CGI backgrounds, a lot of green screen, there's a lot of animated things that just don't work. There's an underwater scene or two underwater scenes where I just realize something is kind of off, and I don't know what exactly it is, but it just is something. There's a lot of rain that is really not needed. All of these additions that try to make this film more epic, and maybe also try to hide that it's still Harrison Ford doing these things, and they have to make him a little bit less old in this film. But they just take me out completely, and that therefore not really any action sequence really convinced me or engaged me. And so that was kind of sad to see. Now here's a problem I have with this, which is that this movie has a $300 million budget. I have actually never really heard that any movie has a budget over 200 million. I don't know if this is the highest budget ever for a movie, but I mean, to be honest, you can do a lot more with a lot less. Best example is the first 4 Indiana Jones movies, because I think the first one has a $20 million budget, the next one has maybe a little bit more, 35 or whatever, and the highest budget was Part 4, which was 150 million. Now the most intense Indiana Jones movie is the first one, with the least amount of budget. Yes, Harrison Ford was also younger in this movie, but with just 20 million they made a very intense action movie that still looked super realistic because they did everything in camera. And with real cars and real backgrounds and real locations, it just was a lot more convincing. This one has a $300 million budget. Instead of using this for real locations and real backgrounds, it uses it for more CGI to hide the things that they can't do with Harrison Ford anymore, and it just didn't work. Another good example I can give is The Irishman, which had a $150 million budget. For a 3.5 hour long movie, they de-aged basically every single character that was there for more than half an hour, and the whole movie was always close-ups on all of these characters. It was a drama. There was not a lot of action that could hide any of the faces. It was all drama where you could always see the characters' faces. And to be honest, even though some people had some problems with that movie, I never noticed the de-aging in that film. And it was 3.5 hours long and half the budget of this movie. This movie only had to have 20 or 30 minutes in this whole movie with the de-aged Harrison Ford and the de-aged Mads Mikkelsen, and I instantly noticed it. So I don't know what went wrong, but something went definitely wrong, because I couldn't help but notice it. I don't know how we can do so much more with half the budget. I just don't understand it, to be honest. Because if they know that Harrison Ford is so old at this point, why don't they just make something that can be done more realistically and something that could show Harrison Ford still do things? Why do they have to have this underwater scene with all these eels around them? Or why do they have to have this car chase? They don't have to have these types of action sequences if they don't know how to execute them well without using CGI. They just sacrificed making the movie realistic for making a very extravagant plot and extravagant set pieces, which just didn't work at all for me. So what I would want from this movie is maybe less extreme action, but more realistic action with Harrison Ford, instead of more extreme action that is less realistic. Another thing that I really didn't enjoy is definitely regarding spoilers that I don't want to discuss before giving the rating. So I just want to say I think this movie is still enjoyable. I loved all the parts where not a lot of CGI was used. There was a stretch of the movie where they were just in caves, and to be honest, during that part I was always engaged. But as soon as they moved into bigger locations and action sequences, I instantly noticed something about the movie that wasn't quite right, and therefore I was just not as engaged. But that stretch of the movie where they didn't need all of that CGI was really good, and I was always invested. So I realized it was really just the CGI that took me out and that made me enjoy the movie less, and not the plot of the movie or the characters, because I enjoyed all of them. So again, I definitely enjoyed the movie, but I still don't think it's really good. I'm kind of right in the middle. If I had a 0 in this rating system, I would give this a 5, which is the exact middle of the movie. I'm not loving it, but I'm also not hating it. But because I used the Letterboxd rating, which is just 1 to 10, I have to give this movie a 5, which is kind of disappointing for me, but what can you do? Now I'm just going to talk quickly about spoilers. 2 things I didn't quite like about the movie. First of all, they actually time traveled in this film, which I did not expect. I am open for that idea. The movies kind of got more and more extravagant, with the first 3 movies all having some kind of magic that were much more grounded, to be honest. Part 4 had aliens. I wasn't mad at it. People kind of didn't like it, but I thought, okay, why not? If we have all these extravagant things in the first 3 parts, why not aliens? And this one actually had time travel, which I'm also open for. Why not? You can do it. It was just the ending of Indiana Jones' character that just didn't work for me. To be honest, I would have liked if he stayed in that time period and died there watching this battle. I didn't want him to help Archimedes and change the course of time, but I would have wanted him to stay in that time period and maybe even die, because it would have just fit way better for his character. But him getting taken out of there by Helena, by just being knocked out, kind of makes the movie even more passive in the ending for Indiana Jones, because he's already not doing a lot in the plane, and now he's also not really making the decision by himself to leave there and to survive. I saw that in the Chris Duckman review on this movie, and I kind of realized, yeah, I mean, it's kind of true. He doesn't really do anything in the finale, which I didn't really notice, but to be honest, yeah, he could have done a lot more. But yeah, that was kind of a problem, and I didn't like the direct ending of the movie either. Marion being back again, I just don't really believe it. I would have liked if they just didn't use her, because to be honest, they started this movie with Indiana Jones being alone, separated from Marion because of the death of their child played by Shia LaBeouf. I didn't mind that. I thought that was a good backstory for this movie. But to be honest, if the whole movie started with them getting a divorce, if their relationship has actually been so bad up to this point that they actually decided to get a divorce after all they've been through to this point, I don't believe that all she needed to get back is just Helena saying, hey, he's not well, you need to get back. I just don't believe it. And so the ending just kind of felt forced and not really realistic. It's kind of sad. I would have liked to at least have the ending end this series very well, because 5 parts is a long series, and this series has existed since the 80s. The ending we got now just doesn't feel as earned, to be honest. So yeah, that's everything I have to say about this movie. I might still rewatch it, to be honest. I might still get this on DVD, so I have the whole film series on DVD. It's just that this movie had some problems, just like Part 4. And definitely will not top any of the 3 movies in the original trilogy. So thank you for watching, and yeah, see you next time.